this training will be recorded, so we'll be able to post it and look at it later and for other people's reference. But my name is James Simmons. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Deputy Press Secretary of Progress, Iowa. And I'm excited to welcome you all to our third and final legislative website training for this year. You're going to be hearing from other members of our team later on today. This is, or later on in this training, this is the third training in our series. We have posted the other videos for the trainings before, and we will be sending up a follow-up email next week with all of the videos, as well as a document that goes through the information that we've discussed here today and in the previous weeks. As always, if anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free to drop stuff into the chat while we're going through this, and one of our team members will be monitoring that as well. So to go ahead and get started, I am going to start by sharing my screen with you all, and we are going to be talking about a couple of different things today that were some specific questions that we discussed within our team and that we got after our first two trainings. So let me start here by sharing my screen and going here. Okay, cool. So cool. We are going to start off today by talking about how we can target legislators. Now that sounds kind of like an aggressive term, but what I mean by targeting legislators is when we're trying to stop a specific bill or make sure we're reaching the right subcommittee to stop whatever legislation or actions moving forward, we can send emails and send information to every legislator, but then when things are broadly sent out like that, most legislators have a tendency to ignore those emails or those requests because they're like, oh, well, it's that mob mentality, that group mentality of somebody else will take care of it. So when we're targeting our information and our messages to specific legislators, it can be more effective overall, but can also make sure that your message is being heard in the first place and not being lost in the shuffle. So one of the ways, one of the main reasons we want to target legislation are on like a number of different bills that we'll be watching. When it comes to certain education funding, when it comes to certain bills like the trans athletic bill, there are some legislators, unfortunately, didn't happen with that bill, but there are some legislators that tend to fall more bipartisanly or a little more moderately, and that can be influenced to maybe vote opposite of their party. And so but to do that, we are focusing on particular pieces of legislation. So if you were here for the first 2 weeks of trainings, we went through how to go through the bill book and how to look up specific bills for everything. If you need a reminder of that, we've got those videos coming out. But looking at specific bills, we can see where they're moving through committee or through subcommittee. We've already passed that first funnel week, which means that certain legislation has died and certain is not, and others have continued. But if we're looking at the House bill, I'm gonna keep referencing the trans bill because it's the one that's on my mind right now. Like in the House bill that was voted on a week before it was voted on in the Senate, during that process, we could find where it's at in the committee. So figuring out, that's a lot of information all at once, but figuring out how we're going to target people, we're going to look at the website really fast. On this page here, we have all of this. And at the top, we have legislation. Excuse me. I'm going to bounce over to here really fast. Thank you. So at the top, we have committees and schedules. And if you click at that at the top of the screen here, it will take you to this homepage. On the homepage, on this committee's homepage, you have the list of all of the different committees in the Iowa House, the Iowa Senate, as well as appropriation subcommittees. And then there are some of these other committees in the center of the page here, like the Capital Projects Committee, International Relations Committee, that are either joint committees between the two chambers or year-round committees that work on different things throughout the year. Over these committees, you can see, if you hover over them, it'll give you a list of these legislators here. You see that Senator Zimbach is the chair of the Senate Agricultural Committee, and the ranking member is Senator Kevin Kinney, the Democrat there. And you can see the list of these legislators. So you can also click on the committee, the link to the committee itself, and it will come up with this list at the top as well. At the bottom, it can give you members' photos. It can give you meeting information for schedules and agendas, subcommittees, and information related to that. This is one of the best places to start if you're trying to figure out who to target or who to speak to in the legislature to kill a bill. So for an agricultural committee, if you're worried about a bill about factory farming or large scale farming and like major companies coming in and rooting out small farmers in Iowa, agricultural committee is probably where you're going to want to target your information. So if you're trying to vote down a bill, Republicans are in the majority in both chambers. So targeting your legislator to start with is going to help out, but also targeting the leadership of committees, asking chairs to not recommend bills to subcommittees, asking chairs to not to stop them before letting it come to subcommittee, but not pulling up a full hearing into committee, working with those individuals that way. Which we've partially gone over, finding subcommittees as well as information in previous trainings, but just a quick brief overview. On these subcommittees assignments and meetings here, it's going to give us all these agricultural subcommittees that have happened and will be happening. At this point, there's none scheduled to happen anymore. And it can give you the name of the legislators over here who are on those bills. So if you are interested in a bill for this Senate File 2110 here, a bill for an act relating to the acreage limitations for the production of hemp, you would want to talk to Shipley, Green, and Kinney at the point of the time that it was in subcommittee, and talk to them and share your emotions towards them one way or another. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment, and we're going to come back here, because that was a lot of information about about targeting and everything. But what do you do once you found the person you want to speak to? How do you speak to them? How do you share your story with them? And so I'm going to go into talking about a couple of different ways that we can connect with our legislators, and then I'm going to invite one of our organizers to jump on and share another way as well. But the easiest way, or easiest in the sense of like getting contact with someone, is if you are able to go to the Capitol, you can actually go up to the chamber doors of the House or Senate, and they have little, depending on the chamber, either pink or yellow slips that you can write notes and send into legislators. So if you are able to come to Des Moines, or you are based out of central Iowa and you are able to make it to the Capitol, you can actually go up to the Capitol on any given day and just ask a representative or senator for a few minutes of their time to sit down and speak with you. Now, they may not be able to do it. They may be very busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. And sometimes legislators don't take meetings because they don't want to put more on their plate. But you have the ability and the access to just go to the legislature and walk up to the doors and request a meeting with whatever representative is your representative, or like we just talked about, the representative that you're targeting for a specific bill. Another super effective way of contacting legislators is by handwriting letters, or writing letters and sending them in through the physical mail. We all love getting birthday cards. We all love getting holiday letters from our friends and family at the end of the year. We all love seeing that's something in person. And at least myself, I know for a fact, will open a letter much more frequently than I'm likely to open just a random email sent to me. And so legislators really like that personal touch, because one, someone put time into it, and they recognize that, so they're going to put the time into reading it at least. But also because they don't get that much mail anymore. Everyone sends everything over email and text and phone call, and so getting a physical piece of mail is really effective. That doesn't mean, however, that emailing is ineffective. But like I mentioned at the top of the training, it's about targeting your email to the specific legislator or specific committee that you're going for. You have every option to send an email, a giant email blast to all 100 House members, all 50 Senate members of the Iowa legislature. But Frequently, the legislators will ignore that when there's mass emails sent because they assume someone else will take care of it. So if you target your email, dear Representative Gaines from Iowa House District 32, she's a Democrat ranking member of House Oversight Committee. I want to see greater oversight on state resource centers. Like the Glenwood Resource Center was a really popular topic a couple of years ago when the investigations were going on with that, targeting in that way. I've mentioned a couple of different ways to target and speak with representatives and connect with them. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our organizer, Sam Blatt. She is going to share some more about how to call legislators and how to actually speak with legislators when you are trying to connect with them.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, James. I'm Sam Blatt, use she, her pronouns, organizer here with Progress Iowa. Thank you all for being here. So just to preface what James said, like it's extremely important to be able to contact our legislators. As we all know, a role that I had previously focused on contacting our U.S. legislators, so like all of our congresswomen and men working hard or not working hard at all. But with that being said, we need to contact our U.S. people, but we also need to contact our state representatives. Obviously, that's what's going on right now in our state, and they need to be held accountable just as much. And so calling into our legislators is is a very effective way, because it goes on record that you've been calling about an issue, which also helps bring more, it brings more seriousness and latitude to that, because we are like showing that 10 people called about this bill, 20 people called about this, 100 people called about this one if they're very upset, and so that helps put it on the record. They're able to put that in, like when they're speaking on subcommittees, if you call them before the committee meeting or subcommittee meeting, they're able to state that people have expressed concern already. And so when you are making your calls, after you check the website, like we saw how to target who you're, either the committee member or your own representative or senator, you're gonna call that number, and most likely you're going to end up calling them and talking to a staffer or getting voicemail. But it's going to be very important that you're keeping it concise, having your point, and then also first and foremost leaving your contact information, not only your phone number but your email, because it's unlikely you'll get a call back, but it's very likely you'll get an email back being contacted. So when you first give a call, state your name, your contact information, both phone number and email, and where you're from as a constituent or as somebody, if it's not your legislator and it's somebody in a committee, why you're calling. And so with tensions going on, I know it's really hard not to get super aggressive, but it's super important to be firm but passionate to be the most effective, because they do keep calls on these records. So you want to make sure that people are like, you're leaving one of those messages that gets really heard about that. So making sure that you're calling and stating XXX bill, Senate file, House bill, whatever you're doing, making sure that you're stating that. And not only, like James said, is it helpful to be calling, but coupling your call with an email or with a handwritten letter, or taking a step further and talking to either myself or Amy and doing a letter to the editor that targets your legislator or a legislator that you're trying to contact about said bill or House file. And so when you make your call, connect it, say a story that makes it personal as well. So you're opposed to, like James said, we're talking about the trans athlete bill. You're opposed to doing that because you want to stand up for Iowa sports and our Iowa sports teams, and stand up for the trans young women who are working just as hard and also need recognition and the ability to play on their sports team. So obviously that was a big hard-hitting bill, and we wanted to make sure that our opinions were expressed about how it's just vile to have that kind of bill. So being able to express your story, how it connects to you. Maybe you have a grandchild, your kids in sports, they're friends with other children in sports, and like connecting it down to that issue, making it very humanized. And then, making sure that they know why you want them to either support or not support a bill or piece of legislation for that. And again, making it a human and making it more human and connecting it to yourself or to your family or community always will help drive it home. And then when you're finishing up your call, you can make sure that you briefly restate, if the staffer asks you questions, answer them, but make sure that you briefly state why you called in a quick sentence. I oppose this, House file, blah, blah, blah. And I want you to vote, no on it. And then if you're talking to a staffer, if you feel like they weren't quite hearing what you're saying, because if, they're of a different party than yourself and they might not be listening as well, you can always ask them to restate what you said. And if they didn't capture what you said the right way, you have the chance to even, maybe say it in a more eloquent way yourself and like restate the problem again, and then make sure that they hear it back. And then after you're done with that, just make sure that you are following up with maybe another email, and again, leaving your contact information so that way they can get back to you. But it's really important to be calling in so they can have it on record that this many people care, and they can bring it up, in the committee or subcommittee that people are taking action against this, and then pairing it with another action to really reinforce why you're for or opposing certain legislation. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, y'all. It's going to be really important that we need to get these calls in during the other funnel weeks as we keep going forward, because we know we have so much to fight for in Iowa here.
Thank you so much, Sam. And like she was saying, like the way we communicate with these legislators is incredibly important. These are very charged issues. These are bills and actions that mean a lot to a lot of us or have a huge impact to a lot of us. And while we may want to go in kicking and screaming and yelling at all of these legislators that are voting for bills that we just completely disagree with, it's not the same on their ends. They're not sitting there feeling the same anger and coming from the same place that we are. And while it may be frustrating, being able to approach legislators in a calm way and sharing your personal story is a way that is a really super effective way to get your point across while at the legislator. Thank you so much, Sam. We have a couple more things that I'm going to go over quickly before we wrap up with the legislative part of our training. But so we've learned how to target, we've learned how to speak with our legislators, but what else can we do at the Iowa Capitol in general? And so this is just going to be a little bit on some tips and tricks about stuff you can do at the Iowa Capitol. Beyond just going to the legislature and writing on a slip asking for a meeting with a legislator. Almost every day in the Capitol, in the center rotunda on the first floor, there are events from different organizations and groups across the state that are trying to promote different issues. That's a great place to go and learn about more issues if you're not familiar with different organizations, or you're wanting to get involved with equitable housing or equitable pay and stuff like that. There are organizations that come and host days and events at the Capitol. When we send the follow-up email, we'll be sure to include the information of how to find that legislative calendar to see what days on the Hill there are. Beyond just seeing those events as well, you can go into the galleries or the upper seating area of every chamber and watch any debate or watch what's happening on the floor. The gallery is very, very rarely closed, only for very special occasions. So during legislative session, you have the ability to just go in and take a seat, and you could watch the chamber all day long. You can watch them walk in and out. You can watch them do debate. You can just sit there and write on your laptop or read a book on your phone if you wanted to, but you have access to go in and watch what's going on at the Capitol. One more final or a couple more things for being at the Capitol. The Iowa Senate and the Iowa House both have dress codes for the staff and for the legislators on the floor. There are times when that dress code is enforced with guests coming into the chamber, and there are times that it isn't. It's really depending on the decorum and what's going on that day at the legislature. But as a heads up, if you are attending the Capitol, if able, we recommend wearing some kind of nice pair of pants that are not denim, and a button-up or a blouse, and a jacket if you're going into the Senate. The Iowa Legislative Chamber's dress code is very gendered at the moment in either chamber, but as just citizens of Iowa, we get a little more leeway going into the chambers wearing business formal or business casual. And the last kind of silly trick, but information for the Capitol is that it is not very accessible at all. The building is not super easy to get around. So if you are in a wheelchair, use crutches or canes or any other kind of mobility impairment. Just a heads up that that you can get around the Capitol. It just takes a lot longer because it is not accessible around the thing. And on that same front, if you have to use the restroom or are planning on being at the Capitol during the day, prepare in advance. There are not a lot of restrooms at the building either. So cool. We finished up with that Capitol little portion there. I'm going to switch over to one more topic before I kick it over to another one of our organizers. So I'm going to share my screen again. Here we are. We're back to the homepage of the Iowa legislature. And so we just talked about how to target these representatives, how to contact representatives. In previous trainings. We talked about finding your representative, and all of that stuff holds true, and all that stuff will be completely great for the rest of for the next 10 years. But right now we are in the process of redistricting. So every 10 years, the US Census Bureau takes the census and counts the populations across the state. And from there, legislative maps, both at the state and federal level, are drawn to represent the new population shifts and changes across the country. In Iowa, we actually have what is considered the gold standard for the country of redistricting. We have a really fair, nonpartisan process that fortunately was able to successfully move forward this last redistricting cycle as well. So, but with new redistricting, there's a chance that your legislator that you have now will not be the same legislator you have come this election in November. So we want to know, so we need to know how to find our legislators moving forward. So on the Iowa legislative homepage, we're going to go up here where it says legislators. And just like last time, like when we're trying to find our current legislators, it's going to give you this list of find your legislator, leadership, senators, representatives. But normally we would just say, look at this districts, maps, and data here on the left-hand side. If you clicked on that, it would take you to the current district maps. You can look at the congressional ones. So Randy Feenstra, Ashley Henson, Marionette Miller Meeks, Cindy Axne's maps. Or you can look at Iowa House ones, Iowa House specific ones here, and it'll give you all of these here. So, but with redistricting, we need to be able to look up our new legislators. So on that same left-hand side, it says Iowa redistricting. We're going to click on that, and it's going to bring you to this page. You'll see at the top that it's got 2021, 2011, 2001, 1999, or 1991, and 1981. So you can go back and look at various decades of redistricting in Iowa, but for 2021, you're going to want to make sure that you're clicked on the second plan under redistricting plans. The first one did not pass, the second one did pass. And so on the second plan here, and then you can look at them in that same way of the ones that are currently set, where you can see the version of it where it is now, where it's just going to give you this color. It shows you what the map is going to be like, look like if you look at the entire map in the future. But if you want to be able to look up yours individually easily, we're going to click on interactive districts here. And under interactive districts, it's going to pop up with this really cool map that gives all this information. Over here on the side, it says find an address or place, and you can, and right there, you can look up your address. I am going to just pull up I don't have an address at the moment to just pull up, and I don't want to search anybody's on a reported thing, so I apologize for that. But on this map right here, you are able to, in here, you can type in your address. I'm just going to type in Des Moines, Iowa, and click search. And from there, it's going to bring me down to downtown Des Moines, but it shows me Iowa Senate District 17. This blue marker right here is the address where it's dropping it. And you can see that this blue marker falls in on the right side of this big red squiggle place. Down the center of this big red squiggle place, you see these divided blue lines. And those are the two different lines that show the House and the Senate seats. The red line is the Iowa State Senate district. The blue lines are the 2 House districts that comprise that Senate district. You can see that our little dot down here on Des Moines falls into Iowa House District 33, which you see over here on the left-hand side, and which falls under Iowa House or Iowa Senate District 17. What's also really cool about this map is it doesn't just show, when you're this zoomed in, it doesn't just show you your Iowa House and Iowa Senate districts. It also shows you your U.S. congressional district. So you can see that it says over here, U.S. Congressional District 3. That puts Des Moines into Congresswoman Cindy Axne's district, which is wonderful because she's great. So that is how you find your new legislators for the upcoming election for after the session. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. There's so much information on there. I'm sorry, I just saw your message there. But that is our overview of the legislative website training and how to contact legislators. Now we have a few more bits of information to share with you as well. And so I'm going to kick this over to our other organizer, Amy Adams.
I'm laughing at Tucker's comment because it's so true. That website is so hard to navigate. Hey everyone, Amy Adams. I am an organizer with Progress Iowa and I use she, her pronouns. So there are still a couple ways that you can contact folks, and unfortunately these links are not on, or maybe fortunately because they're a little bit easier to navigate, but these links are not on that state legislative website. So the first one that I want to share with you is to access hang on a second here. The first one is to access forums. So there is this amazing website, the Iowa Disability Policy Resource page, InfoNet. And on this page, they have a list of all of the legislative forums. So you'll notice at the top, you have all of these tabs. And I believe it's not under take action, it's under resources. Okay, so under resources, you're gonna go ahead and click on that. And where it says take action and advocate, I'm going to go down here where it says to find a town hall meeting or a candidate forum near you. This is a wonderful resource. They have all of the town halls listed on here, like eggs and issues, League of Women Voter forums, coffee, constituent coffees, all that kind of stuff. They're all listed on this website. So one of the things that I think Sam mentioned and James mentioned it when he was speaking is it's really great to have a face-to-face, in-person conversation with your legislator if you're able to do that. It's also great to have face-to-face and in-person conversations with legislators who maybe have an important role on a certain committee, or maybe in a leadership role, and just talking to them about an issue that is important to you. So I'm going to give you just a couple of hints or maybe tips and tricks. So one thing to remember is that legislators are not robots, and so they don't always remember all of the names of the bills. So I wrote down, for example, the Senate education bill. It's a partner to the bill that's in the House today, that voucher bill. When that bill was introduced, it was labeled SSB Senate Study Bill 3080. So if that person wasn't on that committee and they didn't know, the number for that bill, and you say, I want to talk to you about SSB 3080, they're not going to know what it is that you're talking to them about. And then, another piece of that is maybe you say, I want to talk to you about Senate Study Bill 3080, but now since it's passed out of committee, that bill has changed and it's now Senate File 2349. They may not know what bill you're going to talk about. So you can use the bill number, but it's also really important to talk about what that bill is. So I want to talk to you about the Senate voucher bill, and then share, be clear, be concise, be polite, what it is about that bill that concerns you. And it's always good to share, I think, think Sam mentioned this, that personal story, how this directly impacts you, how this affects people like me, and how this affects people in our community. Using those we words, bringing folks together, talking about, we as Iowans value public education, and when we have bills that take public funds out of our public schools, that hurts our communities, that hurts our schools, that hurts our kids. So using that unifying language about how this impacts all of us, all Iowans, and not, divisive and polarizing language. And I know that can be hard sometimes because we do get very passionate about these bills and about this legislation, because it does have such a strong impact on many of us living in the state. So again, Infonet, I'll drop the link in the chat, but this is just a really fantastic resource. Unfortunately, the Iowa Legislative website does not have anything like this. Another way for you to get updates on forums or town halls is to sign up for your legislators weekly or bi-weekly, depending upon how often they send it, their newsletter. So that's another way to find out when these forums are. Some folks are still doing them through Zoom, and others are being held in person. I know, for example, I live in Northeast Iowa. We have one coming up next weekend in the Farm Bureau. That's another organization that hosts a lot of these forums. So Labor hosts them, League of Women Voters hosts them, and Farm Bureau also hosts these forums for folks. So let's just assume that the bill that we're talking about has passed the House, it's passed the Senate, they voted on it, and now we are talking about this bill going before the governor for her to sign it. So the next thing that I want to share with you is just contacting the governor. So the site, governor.iowa.gov. So just like at the federal level, there are different branches, and Kim Reynolds is part of the executive branch. So her website and how to contact her is different from how you would contact the other legislators. So this website has actually been updated, and it is much more user-friendly than what it used to be. Previously, it was almost impossible to find contact information for the governor. Maybe that was by design, I don't know. Up here in the right-hand corner under the search, there is contact. Very simply, you just click on that. There are a couple of ways to contact the governor. One is the physical mailing address at the bottom, where you can send a postcard, a personal letter, correspondence. Sometimes things move very quickly, and it isn't very, it's not a good idea to send a personal letter because it just might not get there in time. But if you know something, like months in advance, or like when she delivered her condition of the state address and she laid out her agenda, you could certainly address that and have that sent before the legislation starts moving. This number here, the 515-281, this is calling, and you can leave a message about whatever it is that you're, the issue or the bill that you're calling about, and leave a message with her staff. They're very polite, they're very friendly, and they'll take your information down, just like Sam mentioned, who you are, your address, what it is that you're calling about, and then sharing your information or your personal story. And then the last one is registering an opinion. And this is a form that you can go to the governor's website and fill out just the information, what it is that you are writing about. So this is what would be in lieu of like sending an email to the governor. Again, remember, this will go to one of her staffers. It most likely will not go directly to the governor. And usually the person or whomever is responding to you is also a staff member. It's not likely that the governor is going to directly respond to you. I guess I haven't heard of folks who've had the governor directly respond to them. Usually it's a staff person who does that correspondence for her. So these are just a couple of different ways that are outside of that legislative website that you can be in touch with lawmakers, attending those forums. It's a great opportunity for you to talk to people and ask some questions and find out where a legislator stands on an issue. And then the next one would be contacting the governor. So like I think James and Sam both mentioned, the transgender sports bill that went through last week. It was not a very good bill for the state of Iowa, not a very good bill for anyone. And so once that's signed by both of the legislative bodies, sending correspondence, calling the governor's office and asking her to please veto that bill and not sign it, because ultimately she does have the power to choose whether or not to sign legislation or to not sign it. So there's always that last little bit of hope if there's a particularly challenging bill that comes through. So that is all that we have from the state legislative website, and then these other two websites for corresponding with legislators and the governor. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you all. And if you have any questions for any of the members of our team.